There is a silent mistake most people make. It doesn't look like weakness. It doesn't feel like failure. It even disguises itself as kindness, loyalty, or emotional maturity. But it is the fastest way to lose power in relationships, friendships, business, and influence. The mistake is this: you are too available, always reachable, always responding, always accommodating, always explaining yourself, always present. And the more present you are, the less you are valued. This is not cruelty. It is human nature. When something is always accessible, it stops feeling special. Air is essential, yet unnoticed. Gold is rare, therefore worshipped. People operate the same way. The moment you become predictable in your availability, you remove tension. And tension is the currency of attraction, respect, and psychological gravity. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something most people refuse to accept. Human beings are not moved primarily by loyalty. They are moved by perception. And perception changes the moment you stop being scarce. You were taught that being available makes you valuable. Answer quickly. Show up immediately. Sacrifice your time. Be dependable at all costs. But there is a difference between reliability and accessibility. Reliability builds trust. Over-accessibility destroys mystique. When you are constantly available, you unconsciously communicate. I have nothing more important than you. And importance is ranked subconsciously. Power flows toward the one whose time feels scarce. When you withdraw strategically, something interesting happens. People feel it. Not logically. Emotionally. There is a subtle anxiety that arises when your presence is no longer guaranteed. Why? Because uncertainty activates attention. When you are always there, the brain relaxes. When you become less available, the brain leans forward. This is not manipulation. It is understanding stimulus and response. Even attachment theory confirms this dynamic. Intermittent reinforcement, not constant reassurance, creates the strongest bonds. Casinos do not reward every spin. They reward unpredictably. And unpredictability creates obsession. Think of attention as currency. If you print too much money, inflation happens. If you give too much access, your presence devalues. The modern world has destroyed scarcity. Instant replies, online indicators, read receipts, endless availability. You are reachable 24/7. And because you are reachable 24/7, you are replaceable 24/7. The one who is slightly out of reach, they create curiosity. They create desire. They create pursuit. This is not about playing games. This is about restoring psychological equilibrium. Most people don't withdraw because they are afraid. Afraid of losing connection. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid someone will move on. But here is the truth must avoid. If your constant presence is the only thing holding someone's attention, you never had their respect. Presence should enhance value, not be the value. Throughout history, powerful figures understood the importance of selective visibility. Leaders did not make themselves constantly accessible. They controlled access. They controlled the audience. They controlled timing. Scarcity elevated authority. Even emperors understood ceremony, and distance were tools of influence. If everyone can approach you, no one reveres you. There is a misconception. Withdrawal is not coldness. It is not cruelty. It is not emotional abandonment. It is a controlled presence. You are not vanishing. You are choosing when to appear. And choice creates hierarchy. When your presence feels intentional rather than automatic, people begin to value it differently. The shift happens quietly. You stop replying instantly. You stop explaining every decision. You stop overgiving energy. You let silence breathe. At first, nothing seems to change. Then something does. They initiate more. They question your distance. They try to re-establish proximity. Why? Because certainty has been disrupted, and humans chase what feels unstable. Being available often masks a deeper need: validation. If you are always responding, always engaging, always helping, you feel needed. But being needed is not the same as being respected. Neediness creates obligation. Scarcity creates admiration. You must decide which one you want. Absence, when intentional, forces recalibration. It causes others to confront your value, not through argument, through contrast. When light disappears, darkness becomes noticeable. When your presence decreases, your impact becomes measurable. This is the Machiavellian law of absence. What is not guaranteed becomes desired. Another form of availability is emotional transparency without boundaries. You explain why you didn't reply. You justify why you were busy. You apologize for having priorities. Every explanation lowers perceived dominance. Some power rarely explains itself excessively. It moves, and others adjust. Withdrawing will feel uncomfortable. Silence feels unnatural at first. You will want to fill the gap, to reassure, to smooth the tension. Do not. Tension is not danger. Tension is leverage. And if you cannot tolerate temporary discomfort, you will always surrender long-term influence. If your absence changes nothing, then your presence meant little. This is not meant to hurt you. It is meant to wake you. Because when you realize this, you gain freedom. You stop trying to earn importance through availability. You start building importance through self-control. Time is the ultimate signal of hierarchy. Who you prioritize reflects your internal value system. When you treat your time as unlimited, others will too. When you treat it as finite, guarded, intentional, others adjust subconsciously. You do not announce it. You embody it. Authority is not loud. It is calm. It is selective. It does not rush. It does not chase. It does not over-communicate. When you withdraw strategically, you communicate. I choose. And choice is power. We are not becoming distant to punish others. We are becoming deliberate to protect our value. And in doing so, something inevitable happens. The dynamic shifts. People lean in. They notice. They reassess. Because certainty has been replaced with scarcity. And scarcity has always been magnetic. If this resonates with you, if you've realized you've been too available, too accessible, too predictable, subscribe now. Because next, we go deeper into the psychology of scarcity, why human nature responds to absence with intensity, and how to withdraw without appearing weak. The transformation begins with awareness. There is a reason withdrawal works. It is not mystical. It is not poetic. It is neurological. Your brain is not designed to value what is constant. It is designed to notice change. And when you become less available, you introduce change into the emotional system of another person. Change creates attention. Attention creates focus. Focus creates emotional investment. This is the hidden mechanism behind the Machiavellian law of absence. Most people misunderstand attraction and attachment. They think consistency creates desire. It does not. Consistency creates comfort. Desire is fueled by uncertainty. Dopamine, the chemical associated with motivation and pursuit, spikes not when a reward is received, but when a reward is anticipated. When something is predictable, dopamine stabilizes. When something becomes uncertain, dopamine rises. That is why the unpredictable text excites more than the constant one. The delayed reply feels heavier than the instant one. The rare compliment means more than the daily praise. Your availability has been flattening emotional intensity. Withdrawal restores the spike. Behavioral psychology has proven this repeatedly. When rewards are given randomly rather than consistently, attachment becomes stronger. Slot machines are the classic example. If they paid every time, players would lose interest. The unpredictability is what hooks them. Human relationships operate on similar circuitry. When you are always available, you are predictable. When you are selectively available, you become engaging. This is not cruelty. This is stimulus conditioning. The scarcity principle states, the less available something is, the more valuable it appears. This applies to objects, to opportunities, to time, and to people. Luxury brands restrict supply deliberately. High-level leaders limit access deliberately. Influential figures disappear strategically. They understand something subtle. Availability signals abundance. Scarcity signals value. If you can be reached at any moment, your time appears unlimited. Unlimited things feel cheap. When someone is certain you will always respond, they stop investing effort. Why would they? Effort is required only when something feels unstable. When you become slightly unpredictable, effort returns. They check more. They initiate more. They think more. Not because they consciously choose to, but because the brain is wired to resolve uncertainty. And you become the unresolved variable. There is another layer most people ignore. Attachment intensifies in the presence of perceived loss. When something feels secure and permanent, attachment relaxes. When something feels like it could disappear, attachment activates. This is why people value health more after illness, money more after scarcity, relationships more after distance. Withdrawal creates micro-loss. Micro-loss triggers emotional recalibration. The brain begins to ask, wait, has something changed? And in that question, attention is born. Availability is not just physical, it is emotional. When you react instantly to everything, you train others to expect emotional access. When you respond instead of react, you create emotional structure. Non-reactivity communicates composure. Composure communicates strength. Strength creates gravitational pull. Most people overreact because they fear disconnection. But disconnection is not always loss. Sometimes it is repositioning. Observe social dynamics carefully. The person who pursues intensely often loses leverage. Why? Because pursuit signals imbalance. When you chase, you imply, I need this more than you do. Need reduces negotiation power. Desire should be mutual. But the one who appears less dependent holds psychological advantage. Machiavelli understood that perceived independence increases authority. He wrote about fear and love. But beneath that discussion was something deeper: control of perception. When you withdraw, you reshape perception. Silence is uncomfortable for most people. They fill it quickly, with texts, with explanations, with reassurance. But silence has weight. When you stop speaking unnecessarily, your words gain density. When you stop being constantly present, your presence gains gravity. Silence introduces interpretation. Interpretation introduces intrigue. And intrigue fuels attraction. The modern world has made strategic absence rare. You can see when someone was last online, when they read your message, when they are active. Constant visibility has destroyed mystery. But mystery has not lost its power. It has become rarer. And rarity increases impact. If you reduce your digital exposure, if you become less predictable, you separate yourself from the herd of constant noise. And difference attracts attention. Think of your energy as capital. Every instant reply is a withdrawal from your reserve. Every over-explanation is a leak. Every anxious reassurance is devaluation. When you ration your emotional energy, it becomes premium. Premium things are handled carefully. Cheap things are consumed carelessly. Decide how you want to be treated. There is an ethical line. Withdrawal is not ghosting without cause. It is not punishment. It is not emotional warfare. It is boundary reinforcement. The difference lies in intention. If you withdraw to control others, it will feel forced. If you withdraw to recalibrate yourself, it will feel natural. True power does not chase reactions. It stabilizes itself first. And stability shifts dynamics automatically. Before external results appear, something changes inside you. You begin to notice how often you sought approval, how often you responded instantly to avoid discomfort, how often you overextended yourself to maintain connection. Withdrawal exposes your own dependency patterns. This is uncomfortable, but necessary. Because you cannot create scarcity externally if you are internally desperate. The power begins within. When you start becoming less available, reactions vary. Some will lean in. Some will test you. Some will withdraw themselves. This is data. Data reveals hierarchy. If someone loses interest the moment you stop overgiving, they were attached to your effort, not to you. If someone increases effort when you reduce yours, they value you. Withdrawal reveals truth faster than conversation ever could. Authority has always been linked to distance. A king was not accessible to everyone. A general was not constantly explaining strategy. A philosopher was not arguing with every critic. Distance creates reverence. Familiarity, when excessive, breeds indifference. You do not need to be unreachable. You need to be selective. See, selective presence communicates, I am not driven by impulse. I am driven by choice. And choice is power. This strategy demands restraint. You will want to clarify, to check in, to reassure. Do not move from impulse. Move from intention. When you feel the urge to instantly reply, pause. When you feel the urge to explain, simplify. When you feel the urge to chase, withdraw. Each small act of restraint compounds, and over time, your psychological posture changes. Respect is not demanded, it is observed. When you manage your availability, others subconsciously register boundaries. Boundaries define value. If you are always flexible, always bending, always accommodating, you train others to deprioritize you. When you become structured, you train others to step up. Many avoid withdrawal because they fear, if I step back, I'll lose them. But consider the alternative. If stepping back makes them leave, were they anchored to you or to your constant supply of attention? Real connection survives recalibration. Artificial connection collapses under scarcity. Better to discover truth early than live in illusion. Human psychology is cyclical. Engagement, distance, re-engagement. This rhythm keeps dynamics alive. Flat lines represent death in medicine. Flat emotional dynamics represent stagnation. Withdrawal introduces rhythm, and rhythm sustains attraction. At its core, this is about leverage. Leverage is not force, it is positioning. When you are overly available, you surrender positioning. When you become selectively present, you reclaim leverage. You are no longer reacting. You are influencing. And influence is subtle. It does not shout. It adjusts. The truth is uncomfortable. You have likely overgiven, overexplained, overresponded. Not because you are weak, but because you were conditioned to equate availability with value. Now you understand. Value increases when access decreases. Presence gains weight when it is not guaranteed. And power begins the moment you can tolerate silence. Next, we move into the most misunderstood layer of all, emotional detachment. Not apathy, not coldness, but controlled internal independence, because you can withdraw externally and still be emotionally desperate internally. And that contradiction will sabotage everything. You can delay a reply. You can reduce availability. You can disappear for hours, even days. But if internally you are anxious, checking your phone, overthinking their silence, imagining outcomes, you have not withdrawn, or you have only performed it. True power begins when your nervous system is no longer enslaved to response, because the real problem was never your availability. It was your emotional dependence. Most people are not addicted to a person. They are addicted to feedback, the message notification, the reply, the validation, the reassurance that they still matter. This is not a weakness. It is conditioning. Every response gives you a micro dose of affirmation. And when it doesn't arrive, you feel withdrawal. You call it missing them. But often, you are missing the dopamine loop. And until you break that loop, strategic absence will feel like torture. We live in a world of constant stimulation, instant communication, instant reactions, instant validation. Silence feels threatening, not because it is dangerous, but because it exposes your attachment. When someone doesn't respond immediately, your mind begins constructing narratives. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Is something wrong? This spiral reveals something important. Your emotional stability was outsourced, and when you withdraw externally, the internal instability becomes louder. Powerful individuals tolerate uncertainty. They do not rush to resolve it. They do not chase clarity out of anxiety. They allow ambiguity to exist. When you send a message and do not receive a reply, do nothing. Not as a tactic, as a discipline. Let silence exist. The one who breaks first often reveals who needs the interaction more. And need always reduces leverage. When you stop over-investing emotionally, something fascinating happens. You begin to see clearly. You notice patterns. You notice who initiates, who reciprocates, who only engages when convenient. Before, your emotional over-involvement blinded you. Now, distance sharpens perception. Withdrawal is not just about influence, it is about clarity. Let's make something clear. Detachment is not indifference, it is self-regulation. Coldness pushes people away. Detachment stabilizes you. You can care deeply and still remain composed. You can value someone and still not chase them. You can desire connection without being controlled by it. This is strength. Ask yourself a dangerous question. If this person disappeared tomorrow, would you collapse? If the answer is yes, you have made them your emotional center. And whenever someone becomes your center, you orbit them. The one who orbits does not control the gravitational field. Emotional independence means you remain your own axis. Others may enter your world, but they do not define it. When you are no longer anxious for response, your communication changes, your tone stabilizes, your messages shorten, your energy becomes measured. You stop over-explaining. You stop filling silence. And people feel this shift. They cannot always articulate it, but they sense something has changed. That change is composure, and composure commands respect. Not every message deserves immediate enthusiasm. Not every delay requires concern. Not every shift requires confrontation. When you react to everything, you become predictable. When you choose when to react, you become strategic. The most powerful response is sometimes no response, not as punishment, but as filtering. You are deciding what deserves your energy. And here is another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you over-available yourself because you enjoy being needed. You enjoy being the emotional anchor. You enjoy being the one they rely on. It gives you importance. But importance built on dependency is fragile. The moment you stop providing, the dynamic shifts. True importance exists even when you step back. Dependency-based importance collapses under distance. Detachment exposes the difference. If you want your presence to feel rare externally, you must treat it as rare internally. You cannot secretly crave constant engagement and expect your withdrawal to feel powerful. People sense incongruence. If you disappear but radiate anxiety, your energy betrays you. If you withdraw calmly, your silence carries weight. Power is alignment between action and internal state. Pause and reflect. How often do you check if they viewed your story? Reread conversations? Analyze tone shifts? Wait for a reply before sleeping? This is not judgment. This is awareness. Because awareness is the first fracture in dependency. You are not withdrawing to manipulate. You are withdrawing to reclaim internal control. There comes a moment when you no longer feel urgency. You send a message and continue your day. You notice silence and feel nothing alarming. You see distance and do not panic. That moment is freedom, because your peace is no longer contingent. And when peace is not contingent, you become dangerous in the most controlled way. Pause here. Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop chasing, people lean closer? Have you experienced someone becoming more attentive after you emotionally stepped back? Comment below. Have you ever tested silence? And what happened when you did? Your experience reveals where you stand in this dynamic. Some will test you when you detach. They may increase affection suddenly, create drama, pull away intentionally. These are reactions to your shift. Do not overreact to reactions. When you detach, you expose who relied on your predictability. Hold your posture. Consistency in composure amplifies influence. The highest level of detachment is this. You no longer require external confirmation of your value, not from attention, not from praise, not from constant interaction. Your worth is internally anchored, and once that anchor exists, withdrawal stops feeling like a strategy. It becomes your natural rhythm. Silence is not emptiness, it is space. Space forces reflection. Space forces others to meet you halfway. When you always close the gap, others never need to move. When you step back, movement is required, and movement reveals intention. Watch carefully what happens when you master this. The person who once responded casually now checks in. The one who took you for granted now notices shifts. The dynamic rebalances, not because you demanded it, but because you changed the supply. Availability dropped. Perceived value rose. Human psychology adjusted accordingly. Detachment is not about making someone chase you. It is about ensuring you are never chasing anyone emotionally. You are centered, you are grounded, you are selective. And from that position, influence happens naturally. When you detach internally, you gain something more important than leverage. You gain peace. Far, because desperation disappears. Anxiety fades. You stop micromanaging outcomes. And ironically, that calm confidence is what makes others lean in. The less you need, the more you are wanted. Next, we become practical. How do you implement strategic absence in modern life? In texting? In dating? In friendships? In business? In leadership? Because philosophy without application is fantasy. Most people fail at withdrawal for one reason. They make it dramatic. They vanish abruptly. They become cold overnight. They weaponize silence. That is not power. That is emotional reaction disguised as strategy. Strategic absence is subtle. It is controlled. It is gradual. It is internally calm. And when done correctly, It does not look like manipulation. It looks like growth. Rule 1. Reduce frequency, not warmth. The first mistake people make is confusing withdrawal with hostility. You do not need to become dry, rude, or dismissive. You reduce frequency, not warmth. Instead of replying instantly, you reply when convenient. Instead of initiating daily, you initiate selectively. Instead of being available every evening, you create space. Your tone remains composed, but your access becomes structured. This signals maturity, not game playing. Rule 2. Stop over-explaining your time. One of the biggest signals of low leverage is excessive explanation. I'm sorry I was busy. I didn't reply because I had work. I didn't mean to ignore you. Notice the pattern? Apologizing for having a life. Powerful individuals do not narrate their schedules. They state availability. What, let's talk tomorrow. I'll get back to you later. Tonight doesn't work. Short, clean, unemotional. Over-explaining communicates anxiety about perception. Calm brevity communicates certainty. Rule 3. Reclaim your digital presence. Modern availability is primarily digital. Online indicators, stories, constant posting, immediate responses. You don't need to disappear from the internet, but you can reduce predictability. Delay responses intentionally. Post less frequently. Avoid reacting to every story. Don't reward every message with instant engagement. When your digital presence becomes less predictable, your psychological presence becomes more intriguing. Mystery is rare in a world of oversharing. Rule 4. Match investment levels. One of the most powerful tactical shifts is this. Stop over-investing. If they initiate twice a week, do not initiate 5 times. If they respond with 1 sentence, do not send 5 paragraphs. If they take hours to reply, do not reply in seconds every time. Match effort. Not out of ego, out of balance. Balanced dynamics sustain respect. Overgiving creates imbalance. Imbalance creates undervaluation. Rule 5. Do not announce your withdrawal. Never say, I'm going to be less available. I'm pulling back. I'm done chasing. Announcements destroy subtlety. Power shifts quietly. When you change behavior without explanation, others must interpret the shift. Interpretation creates curiosity. Curiosity creates engagement. If you narrate it, you remove the psychological effect. In romantic contexts, overavailability kills tension faster than incompatibility. If you reply instantly every time, clear your schedule constantly, offer reassurance without being asked, chase after minimal effort, you create certainty too early. Attraction requires progression, not saturation. Strategic absence in dating means you maintain your own life. You are not always reachable. You allow them to initiate. You let silence breathe. When they feel they must earn access to your time, they value it more. Even friendships require space. When you are always the planner, always the caller, always the emotional support, you condition the dynamic. Try stepping back. Let them reach out. Let them initiate plans. Let them notice your absence. If the friendship weakens instantly, you were carrying it alone. Withdrawal reveals imbalance, and awareness is better than illusion. Availability affects professional authority. If you respond instantly to every email, accept every meeting, say yes to every request, you become accessible, not respected. In professional environments, set response windows, decline unnecessary calls, protect focused time, speak concisely. Executives do not overcommunicate, they decide. And decisions create hierarchy. Your time must feel structured. Structure implies value. Leaders who are overly accessible often lose perceived authority. Approachability is important. Overexposure is not. There must be controlled distance. When people cannot access you instantly, they prepare more carefully for interactions. Preparation increases seriousness, and seriousness increases respect. Strategic absence in leadership is about creating rhythm, not distance for ego, but distance for impact. When you begin applying this, expect resistance. Some will say, "You've changed. You're distant. Are you okay?" Stay calm. Growth often looks like detachment to those used to your overextension. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming balanced. And balance threatens those who benefited from your imbalance. A powerful tool, when natural, is delayed response. Not extreme delays, not silent treatment, but non-urgency. If you always reply within seconds, shift to replying when it fits your schedule. Your life must appear full. Even if it already is, your communication must reflect it. People subconsciously rank importance by response patterns. Urgency signals priority. Reduce automatic urgency. Another mistake is overcompensation. Going from overavailable to unreachable. From warm to cold. From responsive to indifferent. That is an emotional reaction. Strategic absence is measured. Gradual shifts create sustainable change. Sudden personality changes create confusion and distrust. Move intelligently. As you practice this, you'll notice something internal. You stop waiting. You stop checking. You stop monitoring reactions. You move through your day unaffected. This calm detachment radiates. And ironically, that calm is what increases attraction and respect. Because stability is rare, and rare things are valued. When someone begins leaning in after you withdraw, do not immediately return to overgiving. Maintain rhythm. If they increase effort, meet it. Don't exceed it. If they initiate more, reciprocate. Don't overwhelm. The moment you overcompensate, you reset the old dynamic. Sustained structure. Structure builds long-term leverage. Strategic absence also reveals incompatibility. If you reduce effort slightly and everything collapses, that connection was fragile. You cannot sustain dynamics by oversupplying energy forever. Sometimes withdrawal doesn't fix the dynamic. It exposes its weakness. And that is clarity. Clarity is power. When practiced consistently, strategic absence does three things. It increases perceived value. It restores balanced effort. It strengthens your internal independence. And over time, people begin treating you differently. Not because you demanded it, but because your behavior signaled higher value. Behavior always communicates rank. The most important shift is invisible. You no longer operate from fear of loss. You operate from choice. And the one who chooses, not chases, controls momentum. This is not manipulation. This is psychological literacy. Understanding how human nature responds to scarcity and aligning your behavior accordingly. Because strategic absence is not just about others. It is about the transformation of your identity. The person who once overgave becomes the person who is selected. The person who once chased becomes the person who is pursued. At the beginning of this journey, you believed availability was virtue. That constant presence proved loyalty. Those immediate replies proved interest. That overgiving proved value. Now you understand something deeper. Value is not proven through access. It is revealed through restraint. And restraint is not suppression. It is power under control. Before, you checked your phone repeatedly. You replied instantly. You over-explained delays. You filled silence with reassurance. You chased clarity to calm your anxiety. After. You respond when it suits you. You let silence exist. You do not narrate your schedule. You observe effort before increasing yours. You remained centered, regardless of reaction. Nothing loud changed, but everything shifted. When you stop over-offering yourself, something remarkable happens. People begin to qualify themselves to you. They initiate more thoughtfully. They invest more intentionally. They attempt to secure your attention. Because attention that is not guaranteed feels earned. And what is earned feels valuable. You have not manipulated anyone. You have adjusted supply. And human psychology always recalibrates to supply. There is a calm that emerges when you are no longer dependent on response. You send a message and move on. You notice silence and remain steady. You sense distance and do not panic. This calm is authority. Authority is not dominance over others. It is mastery over self. The one who controls their impulses controls the dynamic. It is alignment with human nature. Throughout history, those who understood controlled visibility maintained influence. They appeared when necessary, spoke when impactful, withdrew when strategic. They were not constantly accessible, because constant accessibility removes hierarchy. Even in philosophy, distance created weight. Consider Niccolò Machiavelli. His ideas in The Prince were not about cruelty for its own sake. They were about perception. He understood that authority often depends on how one manages image, presence, and access. You are applying that principle interpersonally, not to dominate, but to stop diminishing yourself. There is a subtle humiliation in emotional chasing. How over-texting, over-calling, over-clarifying, over-worrying. It feels small. Strategic absence eliminates that. Because you are no longer begging for reassurance. You are observing behavior. You are responding proportionally. You are choosing where your energy flows. And choice restores dignity. When someone senses that you are emotionally stable, busy with purpose, unbothered by minor shifts, selective with your time, they feel something different around you, not distance, gravity. People lean toward stability. They chase calm confidence. They pursue what feels self-contained. When you no longer seek to be chosen, you become the one who is chosen. There will be moments where you are tempted to revert, moments of insecurity, moments of overthinking, moments where silence feels heavy. This is the final discipline. Hold posture. For you are not withholding to punish. You are holding boundaries to protect value. If someone truly aligns with you, they will meet you in the middle. If they cannot tolerate balanced space, they were comfortable with your overextension, and you have outgrown that. The ultimate power of strategic absence is not that others chase you. It is that you no longer chase anyone. You no longer fear silence. You no longer interpret every delay as threat. You no longer measure your worth by responsiveness. You are stable, and stability is rare. Rare is valuable. Valuable is respected. When this becomes your natural rhythm, your circle tightens, your relationships strengthen, your time becomes protected, your presence becomes intentional. People treat you according to the access you allow. If access is unlimited, respect declines. If access is structured, respect increases. This is not ego. It is behavioral economics applied to human connection. You started as someone who feared absence. You finish as someone who commands presence. You started seeking reassurance. You finish operating from certainty. You started reacting. You finish choosing. That is the transformation. Remember this. You do not need to announce your growth. You do not need to prove detachment. You do not need to convince anyone of your value. Your behavior will communicate it. Quietly. Consistently. Power is not loud. It is controlled. And control begins with self. If this shift resonated with you, if you are ready to operate from composure instead of impulse, like this video and subscribe. Because this channel is not about surface-level advice. It is about mastering perception, psychology, and power strategically. And this is only the beginning.